You see, this is why you don't panic after a single loss in the first week, in the first game against Cloud9, because now look at us. 3 and us. Sorry, I just got back from the gym. I really need to put. All right, where was I? Oh, yeah. The level of respect that we should realistically be getting as a team. We look good. We do. Granted, our wins are partially against Dignitas, TSM, and Immortals, so the bottom 3 of the league, but generally speaking, in prior years with 100 Thieves, we would still beat the bottom teams and we'd finish with a great record, but our games against those bottom teams would always be a little shaky. And for once, we're just smashing them. Like the TSM game, not even close. You had Doublelift even limit testing a little bit just to see if you could truly go in and like 1v3, which he missed like 4 Zeri Qs in a row, but look, it is what it is. You got to test it once or twice, so I'm perfectly fine with those types of deaths happening. Overall, we looked astounding. Tenacity finally got his game that he was able to pop off. Granted, it was on Cassante, so people were going to write it off a little bit, and it was against Solo, so he still needs to do it against somebody like an Impact, like a Fudge, like, well, CLG doesn't look that great right now, so I was going to say Dokla. Yeah, I guess Impact someday and Fudge would be the big 3 that he like really needs to prove himself against. And luckily next week he goes up, a Summit as well, because we go up against TL and FlyQuest next week. So pretty good test for him. In the jungle, Closer played Vi, looked a lot better today. Mechanics were clean. Glad to see he's back in full force. I'll come back to Bjergsen. Doublelift is probably going to get a Zeri banned at this point. Like, it's actually really good to see him playing that well on this champion early, because now it's going to open up a bunch of other picks as well, as people just automatically ban Zeri from us because he's going against Lucian Nami lanes and still winning. Like, we're winning the poke wars in lane, and then we obviously get the team fights, and then him and Busio can just absolutely smurf. On the Busio front, he's played Yumi Lulu and obviously like the one game of Vizier. So I'm not going to take anything that he's doing right now like to, not that playing Lulu negates anything, but like we need to see him on more champions as well before we can have a fully well thought out opinion. Same with Tenacity. So overall, I'm very happy with where we're at, especially going into next week where we have TL FlyQuest. I am expecting us realistically, like if I'm gauging our power level correctly, we should probably go 1-1. If we can beat TL, then that's great. I mean, they're on the mend as well, so it's actually good. It should be a very close game. And then FlyQuest, hold on for dear life, because God, they look good. And I'm ready to start bringing up the comparisons to 2020 spring Cloud9 if FlyQuest 2-0s this week, because I think they have, I forget, is it EG and then 100 Thieves? They've got a tough week. If they can go 6-0 without Ayla there and beat us pretty handedly, then yeah, like I feel pretty confident saying that FlyQuest is the current best team in the league, bar none, even though they already currently are. I'm just saying, like, they enter that conversation of a threshold above. For the 100 Thieves side, we just got to keep developing. Again, we are going to take losses along the way, and that's perfectly fine. We just have to continue to grow and develop ourselves. Speaking of developing and growing or staying the same, let's go back to Bjergsen real quick. It is so weird being on this side of Bjergsen Zillion. Like, I like it to a certain extent. It was so weird, like half of our team was gonna die in a fight, and then Bjergsen just presses R at the perfect time, like milliseconds before they die, and they just revive with Zillion ult. And it's like, oh, it is so nice to be on the other end of this. And we're not going to talk about the international crowd because people are going to say, oh, it'll get abused internationally. I don't care. It's still winning domestically, and it's fun to watch on our side. Point remains, it's weird. It's an uncomfortable feeling to a certain extent, but I really do like it. And again, for those that don't know, I was a TSM fan back in 2016 whenever I was first getting into League, because TSM was the team that could actually do well internationally, supposedly, even though they didn't. But they're the reason why I started, and then I obviously swapped into Optic and then 100 Thieves after Optic dissolved, unfortunately. Well, dissolved in League of Legends. We do need to talk about these broadcast segments, though. Not this one. This one was hilarious.
Right, yes, there it is! 100 Thieves, 20-2, take the win! What the hell? Yeah! 100 Thieves, Mark! TSM chat disappointed.
Let's go, boys. Yes.
You can just see the anguish on chat's face. Oh, no, he did him like that.
No, the pregame one with Doublelift versus Reggie.
And there was no shortage of commentary, including Doublelift's own tweet exposing TSM's attempt to take legal action against him for calling Reggie a bully in the first place. Now,
look, this was an interesting storyline for me coming into this game. I was thinking about how much Doublelift probably wants to smash TSM and Reggie into the ground. But in hindsight, I'm glad I do these videos like 12 hours afterwards the next day, because in hindsight, that segment was really awkward. Like really, really awkward, because it just had this, tea time vibe and an atmosphere that you shouldn't be doing tea time for. Like, if two players have beef with each other, that's one thing. But you're talking about an LCS org that's in its owner that's under investigation for harassment of players, for a bunch of misconduct that they're currently under probation for, and doesn't look good on your league because you are the ones that allowed all this to go on in the first place without taking proper action to start. Obviously, it's not the broadcast talent, but you're working on behalf of the LCS. You are therefore an extension of Riot Games and their arm there. It's one thing if I talk about it because I'm just a content creator that's completely irrelevant to the situation. If I was also part of TSM or 100 Thieves, it would be equally potentially as appropriate, or part of any LCS org because you're playing into the bigger ecosystem. I'm on the outside looking in, and even then, I would still have to have a certain amount of of grace to a certain extent when covering that topic. Because by all means, I'm thinking about it. We're all thinking it. But the LCS broadcast is not the group that should be saying it, because I already said it. It just feels weird, and by all means, I don't want this to be a moment where people look back and say, "Oh, the broadcast really messed up. Go back to the safe thing of not trying new things." Make sure you do, but make sure you also look at this with a little bit more of a lens of oh, that's actually really bad on the LCS's part. Leave that to the content creators and somebody else to push the narrative if they truly want to, because we all know it's gonna come up regardless. You don't have to say anything. Like the NFL, for example, there's a bunch of different storylines where there's topics that are bigger than the NFL when it comes to some players, some teams, and the interactions between them. The broadcast doesn't have to say anything. Twitter and social media already does that for them. The broadcast can just continue to go on as is, and it's not negligence on the broadcast part. Nobody's sitting there why isn't the broadcast talking about X, Y, and Z? Everybody knows why they're not talking about it, because it's not good for the league to push some of these storylines. You just let the community deal with them and then go from there. Same for the LCS here. It's just a really weird... It was odd, and I don't think it's going to happen again. It's one of those learning curve mistakes that I just don't think will happen again. There'll be a little bit more thought out when it comes to this, but watching it back, little awkward. Final notes I'll add for this specific segment is there was a content piece yesterday that came out for 100 Thieves that was closer with a behind the scenes camera just going around and basically interviewing everybody and kind of, shoving it in their face to a certain extent, but also making good content out of it. And it made me really happy to see him getting some of the spotlight and talking more within content and just being active on that front, because the last 2 weeks have very much just been 100 Thieves as Doublelift's team, and he controlled a lot of the narrative. He even put in Twitch chat yesterday before the game that come watch my co-stream tomorrow as we review this win, which is just phenomenal shit talk. Absolutely love it. But it makes me happy that Closer's getting a little bit of personality out there as well, because what I don't want to see is there will eventually come a time whenever Doublelift is no longer on 100 Thieves. And TSM did a good job of building up fandom. Besides that, unfortunately, they then tore it down to a certain extent with the whole Reggie situation and everything else. But you look at Team Liquid as well, who had Doublelift for 2 years, and they don't have as much to show for it as you would think that they would. And I think part of that is going to come on the shoulders of Closer and everybody else on the team, making sure that they are on top of content, getting their names out there. Tenacity simping on Twitter, as always, which is just hilarious to me. And it's a good way to make sure that you're building up individual players, but also then building an identity as a team. Like, you have these different parts that all come in together and work well and help grow fandom for the org itself, so that when players do move on, or if we have to replace somebody at any given point in time, it doesn't feel like you're losing a large chunk of the fan base like you inevitably will with Doublelift, but you hope you retain a certain portion of that. So overall, that's the final thing I had to say. Phenomenal week as a 100 Thieves fan. Next week is going to be even more interesting. For those that live in New York City, we are having a watch party at Brookland on Friday, so I will be there watching the FlyQuest 100 Thieves game with others at a bar, and I might try and get that reaction recorded, or at least just like put my phone up in the corner so I can use that as part of the footage here. But I also might actually do this video at the bar next Friday and do like a full initial reaction to this. We'll see. Thank you all for tuning in. I've got interviews with several players coming out over the next few days, including Solo, Poom, Core JJ, and a few others. Be sure to follow and like and drop a comment below. What are you looking forward to most with the upcoming week for 100 Thieves? Which matchup, like, is it the FlyQuest game that you're looking forward to, or is like the Closer game versus TL like really ticking your box? Let me know. See you next time.